The story of Lone Trail starts with the childhood memories of Kristen Wright. Her parents took her on a low-flying aircraft for the first time. She is initially scared and doesn't dare to open her eyes. But with the encouragement from her mother, she slowly opened her eyes and saw the sky up above, something so clear and beautiful, yet unreachable. 6,000 meters above the ground is Tara's height, and also the last record of her parents' final flight in 1075. Near that height, there exists some kind of barrier that wraps the whole planet. That is often referred to as the star pod, originated from an Ursine poet. For the longest time, no one ever questioned the mystery behind the sky or what exactly the purpose of that barrier. That is until Kristen Wright has made it her lifetime goal to continue her parents' legacy and uncover the truth of the sky. Moving on with the story of Lone Trail is set 1 month after Dorothy's vision. We are now in a nomadic prison near Max, D.C., the capital of Colombia, where we see Justin Fitzroy Jr., the director of Rhine Business Section, here to bail an important scientist under Kristen's order. As he enters the prison cell, he is shocked that it's a complete laboratory replica. Then we see the prisoner. He's none other than Loken Williams, the son of a gun who has done many unethical experiments, and is the one who once experimented on Operator Rosmontis. Apparently, Kristen has been doing some mysterious project, and Loken has been helping her from prison. But now she needs him in person for the next phase of her project and the so-called survival plan. Shifting to Tri-Mounts, the technological city is buzzing more than ever, because the Vice President of Colombia, Conrad Jackson, is currently visiting the city, campaigning for the upcoming vice president election. Switching to somewhere else, we see Ferdinand apparently still alive. He's now collaborating once again with the Colombian Department of Defense. Beside him is Colonel Blake, the colonel he's in contact with during Dorothy's vision. It's revealed that the threat of the Shard from Victoria has led to the military desperately looking for a new superweapon that could rival it. And turns out Kristen has been collaborating with the Army to create that new superweapon in a project called Horizon Arc. However, 2 weeks ago, just as the project was nearing completion, Kristen and all the techs on the project have disappeared. She even managed to somehow steal a giant flying structure called Hammer. That is pretty much the main part of the superweapon. The military suspects Kristen of betraying the military and using the weapon against Colombia. The DoD initially planned to investigate in a more conspicuous approach, by putting the city under martial law and such. But Ferdinand managed to negotiate with Blake. With his help, the military could solve the issue quietly and smoothly. Besides, no way the military can do such things, since the vice president is in the city. Interestingly, his reason is not exactly for his own benefits, but as one of the founding members of Rhine Lab. He wants to protect the company's reputation as much as possible. Shifting to Rhine HQ, we see Mulces heading towards Kristen's office. But she is surprised to find Ho'olhayak there, as the Snake Lady isn't supposed to be here, and well, Mumu is not fond of her either. Mulces began to attack her. After a bit of conversation, Mumu realizes Ho'olhayak knows something about Kristen's disappearance, and they might work together, which is weird because Ho'olhayak is a Maylander agent. The two eventually stop fighting, and Ho'olhayak leaves, but Mumu doesn't give a chase. Moving on, we're now at the rest stop at the outskirt of the city. We see the Tin Man, a detective and chairman of Maylander Historical Association, enjoying his hot dog while waiting to meet Big Lady Calcit. And she's not alone. She's with Ifrit and elite operator Rosmontis, two victims of Colombia Pursue in progress. They are here to assist with the affairs surrounding Rhine Lab. And since this whole situation with Kristen seems to risk national security, they have been contacted by Maylander to collaborate. A little bit about Maylander here. We previously know that Maylander is an NGO with many branches, but we later got more detail that it was all just a front. established pretty much after Colombia independence. They are, simply put, the Colombian three-letter agencies in one. That also sort of functions as the deep state of Colombia, led by a woman named Celine Maylander, who is noted as someone who has chosen to stay away from public seat and instead going backstage to set up a foundation to guide this country for Mark Max, the first and current president of Colombia. Later on, we see Ho'olhayak waiting for something to fall from the sky. It's related to Kristen's experiment. It's a flying structure meant as a test flight for the hammer, and it falls into a factory in the city District 13. Then Ho'olhayak swiftly approaches the structure to take its black box. We then see the doctor sleeping in a hotel room, then woken up by Mulses. She tells the doctor the news about District 13, and believes it has something to do with Kristen, so Saria and Doc might want to investigate it. Then this Mumu, who turns out to be a clone, disappears after she hears some people entering the room. They are Calcit and the two kids. The doctor is a bit mad since Calcit brought Rosmontis here, but Rosmontis says she's the one who wanted to come along and help, as Mechanist has departed on another mission, and Talopsis and Elena have already gone to the land ship. But Rosmontis also came here because a certain someone in the city had invited her. Later in District 13, the authorities covered the incident and forbade anyone from approaching the site. But Saria, with the help of Tin Man, manages to enter with a clearance he got. Silence is also here. After the previous incident, some batches of experimental materials and transmitters have been missing on their way to Rhine HQ for disposal. Dorothy is afraid it will be used for another crazy ambition, so she asks Silence to go to Tri-Mounts and investigate it, as she is stuck at her lab to cooperate with the military investigation, believing she'll find something in the district. Silence slips into the district and easily find one of the missing transmitter, thanks to another transmitter she got from Dorothy to track them. While chasing the transmitter, she ended up near factory ruins where the flying structure fell, and she sees Saria and Tin Man from afar. Here, Tin Man reveals more about the Horizon Arc project to Saria and Kristen's involvement. Ever since Kristen's collaboration with the DoD, she has become the military corps technical advisor, and thanks to her service, Rhine has gained much policy-side support, making the company stand above all tech companies in Colombia. Kristen proposed to build a flying structure called Hammer that would fly toward Terra's altitude limit, and then absorbs massive amounts of energy from a facility called the Shaft from the ground. The energy will then be directed like some kind of laser beam to a target anywhere on Terra. Upon hearing this project has something to do with that altitude, as well as that massive energy, Saria begins to conjecture Kristen's intention. It seems that Kristen will use this superweapon to achieve her dream, to tear the star pod and then fly to outer space. Switching back to Silence, she got caught by an army patrol. But luckily, Jara Wilson, the director of Rhine HR and a former movie celebrity, managed to smooth things out with the soldier. Then Jara tells Silence to wait at her residence in the district to talk more about this whole shebang. As Silence leaves, Jara then meets the Tin Man alone. From this conversation and later on in the story, we get to know that Jara used to work for the Maylander, to observe Rhine Lab, or specifically Kristen from within. Tin Man is suspicious that years of working with Rhine makes Jara support Kristen more than Colombia. But Jara just evaded the question, and then both part away. Later, we see Ho'olhayak in an underground facility. It's the Shaft, part of the Horizon Arc that will accumulate energy for the hammer, where she met the director of Rhine Engineering, a Banshee Sarkaz named Nasty. The Snake Lady then gives the black box to Nasty, and turns out Nasty is also working with Kristen behind the military's back. Sometime later, Nasty went to Kristen's hideout and informed her about the data from the test flight. It's also revealed they are indeed using the transmitter for their project. Everything seems going well for Kristen's plan, but there's still an energy problem to solve. as they will need an unimaginable amount of energy for the project to succeed. But Kristen just replies that Nasty doesn't need to worry about it. Nasty is fine with it, but remind Kristen she better not die before giving what she promised to her. Meanwhile, we see Doctor's group now in Saria's hideout. Based on what Tin Man told them, Cal and Saria are also discussing how Kristen will get the energy. The shaft is under military control, and tearing the star pod would obviously need bigger energy than the entire city can provide. Cal also receives the data of each Rhine Lab section from Saria. There, she found a clue after reading the surprisingly thick data from the Scientific Investigation section, whose project has been directly approved by Kristen. And their recent exploration project interestingly happens right here in Trimount. But before they can proceed, they are attacked by an unmanned power armor. And before they can destroy them, those mechs have destroyed those section data. It seems someone is trying so hard to keep the group from finding Kristen. But nevertheless, they continue with the investigation. Cal has some vague idea of Kristen's energy core, and she will investigate it, while Saria will investigate Rhine HQ and fetch more data for Calcit. As for the Doctor and the kids, they stay put for the time being. Shifting to Silence and Jara, Jara gives Silence new equipment and a more advanced drone after her previous one got destroyed by the soldier. From their conversation, Jara clearly knows something about Kristen's plan, and Silence wanted to stop it before it went spiral. But Jara doesn't answer anything, and advised Silence to leave, as this whole situation is already out of her scope. However, she doesn't forbid Silence to investigate about Kristen if that's what she chooses. So Silence chose to continue her investigation on the transmitter, hoping it will lead to Kristen. Then in District 9, she found another transmitter floating, and it leads her to a secret laboratory, where her mentor, Dr. Parvis, is there. It seems Parvis is also a part of Kristen's plan, and Silence questions her mentor's involvement in this secret project that could potentially harm others. But Parvis doesn't speak much and refuses to answer, which left Silence feeling troubled. Seeing Parvis and many other scientists seems to ignore people's lives for the sake of scientific progress. After her meeting with Parvis, she is unsure what to do next. Then Ho-Ol-Hayak, who turns out has observed her from afar, tries to shake her spirit a bit by literally sending a moving car toward her. Luckily, Mulsey's clone saved her and tells Silence that Ifrit is in the city. Switching to the Doctor's group, the Tin Man meets them to seek Rhodes Islander cooperation in a whole different matter. It's revealed there's a deep political struggle between the DoD and the government, ever since DoD failure in the recent conflict in Bolivar. The DoD has lost much of its reputation and control of the armed forces. In order to bring back their former glory and absolute control of the armed forces, DoD needs the Horizon Arc project to succeed, and they are getting impatient about resolving issues with Kristen, and wanted to put the city under lockdown to find her easier. But the Vice President is implied to have refused doing such things. Unfortunately for him, we know that the VP once gained much support from the DoD to win his previous election, but now he's not complying with his benefactor at a crucial time. No doubt the military brass is pissed. So in a surprising turns of event, the higher-ups in DoD wanted Blake and his men to carry out an assassination on the Vice President during his visit to Rhine HQ, so that the incident can be a pretense for the military to declare martial law. And now Maylander wanted Rhodes to help protect the VP from within Rhine Lab. Although Cal and Saria aren't here, but Tin Man, who apparently knew the pre-amnesia doctor, believe the doctor and their associates will provide significant support. The next day, the Vice President visited Rhine HQ for a tour, with many reporters present. Blake's men are disguised and ready for the assassination, but the same goes for Maylander agents to prevent it. Shortly, the mission to eliminate the Vice President is a go. But Maylander agents smoothly take out most of the soldiers who are disguised and those stationed outside, while the doctor and Rosmontes are taking care of some power armor and soldiers in the deeper part of the facility, thanks to the access they got from Mulces, and by chance, they also meet Saria. Sometime later, the VP is about to leave Rhine HQ, but Blake hasn't given up yet. He intends to strike the VP convoy by blowing up a liquefied originium pipeline that the convoy will go through. But luckily, with the intel the doctor got, Ifrit was sent to an underground structure connected to the Rhine facility, and just so happens she stumbled upon two soldiers planting explosives. She then takes them down bare-handed, but Ifrit is too late, and the bombs have started the countdown. Fortunately, Saria manages to reach her and rescue Iffy and also the two soldiers. The bomb shortly exploded, but it seems it went off early, and we later know even if it manages to hit the convoy. Turns out Rhine has already anticipated this, and there's only an automaton in the convoy, while the vice president and his retinue already left in secret. Then surprisingly, Silence appears. Silence is worried about what Ifrit is doing here, and tells Saria she saw her with Tin Man the other day and knows Rhine Lab is once again up to no good. She is disappointed that this keeps on happening, and disappointed that Saria is reluctant to make a genuine stand against Rhine Lab and Kristen. But suddenly, the trio are attacked by the military sniper. Saria uses her calcium arts to create a barrier to protect the three of them, but the sniper's bullet manages to penetrate Saria's arts and injure her badly. Shortly, Jara comes in and leads them to safety. As for the doctor and Rosmontes, they are being chased by the soldiers who disguised as Rhine employees. Fortunately, they stumbled upon Justin, who helped by distracting the soldiers, while Rosmontes and Doctor are being transported by Mumu via a ventilation duct to somewhere safe using her water manipulation. But after some time, they got a visitor. It's Loken, and it's revealed he's the one who sent the invitation to Rosmontes. Here Loken calls Rosmontes by her real name, Narcissa, and tries to remind her of who he is. However, Rosmontes doesn't remember or seems to have been told about Loken, but eventually, painful memories about Loken experiment begin to appear. The way that Loken treats Rosmontes makes the doctor lose their cool, and then hit the old man. But Loken doesn't bother. He then tells Rosmontes he'll wait for her in their home. And as he leaves, some unmanned power armors under control of Ho-Ol-Hayak are approaching to attack them. Meanwhile, Mumu's clone intercepts the old man outside. But Loken said something about how Mumu actually wanted to catch up to Kristen and be a part of her plan. After hearing that, and thinking that Kristen, her friend, trusts strangers more than her, she fall into a daze and let Loken get away. Back to Silence's group. Jara persuades Silence to get Ifrit and Saria out of this mess. But before she can answer, Jara hurriedly leads them to a passageway, as a bunch of soldiers are closing in on their position, and now she is informed Ferdinand wanted to meet her. It's revealed Ferdinand helped prevent the VP assassination from behind the scene to prevent blemishing the company's name. Blake also knew about this, but somehow admired his loyalty and still kept him around to find Kristen. So now Ferdinand is threatening Jara to tell Kristen's whereabouts, by using the trio's lives who are now in danger and her relationship with Melander. He knows that Jara was Kristen's guardian when she was only a pup and is still close to her. So no doubt Jara got more clue about Kristen's plan and whereabouts. Later, Tin Man informs the doctor's group to meet him. But first, he met Ho-Ol-Hayak. She was initially ordered by Tin Man to keep an eye on Kristen, but Snake Lady later chose to work with her. And now she's going to betray Melander and kill the Tin Man to prevent him from interfering. That is, if he can be actually killed. As it is said, he's a revenant without a real body, and only using the exoskeleton as some sort of artificial body. Not to mention Tin Man is a powerhouse, so it will be difficult to take him down alone. But Snake Lady doubles the trouble by teaming up with Nasty. With her Banshee witchcraft, Nasty manages to immobilize the Tin Man. and then speak to Tin Man, who has lived for centuries, telling him she believes in the possibility of changing the Sarkaz future in Kristen's plan. And then Ho'olhayak killed the Tin Man, or so it seems. Later, the sound of Banshee's bone whistle can be heard, and the doctor's group heard this. It is similar to what Logos used after the Damazti demise, but Logos is currently on another mission with Supreme Leader Amiya, so the group thought it must be from another Banshee. Shortly, the doctor goes to the meeting place alone, but Ho'olhayak shows herself with Tin Man's metal head to prevent more people interfering with Kristen's plan. Ho'olhayak is going to frame Rhodes Island as the one who killed Tin Man, and even earlier, before eliminating Tin Man, using her not yet compromised identity as a Maylander representative to the vice president. She slandered Rhodes Islander and Saria that they are involved in Kristen's plan. Fortunately, the doctor pulled off a 4D chess move. Turns out this doctor is just Mulcee's clone, and they managed to escape from Snake Lady's plot, at least for now. Now, seeing that staying in your average hotel is not safe anymore, Mumu takes the two to her vivarium. Switching to Silence's side, Saria has woken up, but she's still weak, and now they're being chased by military personnel. They're then cornered into a room. They can use Silence's drone to escape to the other building, but it can only carry 2 people. Despite Saria's protest, Silence controls her drone to carry Saria and Ifrit, while she will confront the army. She reflects on herself, saying that she has always depended on someone stronger like Saria to solve the problem, and thinks it's time for her to be brave and be the first one to step up. But of course, she's not going to take down the army all by herself. She comes to negotiate with the army to find Kristen. After thinking back about the incident on Site 359, Silence mentions the possibility that Kristen has set up a new transmitter's hub for her secret plan. So Silence volunteered to inject herself with a transmitter liquid she got, allowing her to track down the new hub, possibly find Kristen, and stop whatever she's planning. It's the best choice the military has so far, so the military boys agree and no longer draw their attention toward Saria and the others. Switching to the doctor's side, they are at Mumu's vivarium, peace at last. Rosmontis is resting, while the doctor talks to Mulcees to learn more about her and Kristen. Mumu then invited the doctor to a dance and create some kind of illusion of a place using her water manipulation, where we see a cemetery and rundown village in the distance, a place known as the graveyard for the elves. Mulcees then begins to tell about her life, about her being an elf, a race believed to be almost extinct in Terra, and has spent a big part of her life trying to find out about herself. Her elf blood blesses her with an ability to manipulate water molecules, that interestingly not related to originium arts. But she also found that her race is sensitive to originium and can easily contract a lethal oropathy. Wishing for a better future for herself and her kin, Mulcees has a goal to search for a hospitable place where the elves can live in peace without fear of oropathy. And Kristen once promised her and Nasty they would set out on a journey to achieve that dream. And it appears that dream destination is in outer space. Turns out Mumu knows a bit more about Kristen's plan, but she doesn't tell the doctor the exact details and asks if the doctor still trusts her. But the doctor replied, Mumu hasn't done anything despicable, and decided to request her help to find Kristen and learn the truth. And to do that, finding Loken seems to be the most ideal solution. Switching to Silence, she's now with the military to track down Kristen's whereabouts, and it appears Maylander and DOD had reached a compromise to find Kristen and the hammer smoothly. Then Silence senses a strong signal near the sewage treatment and garbage disposal area. Interestingly, not very far from the Army's main position, so Kristen must have one hell of a jammer there. But as they are about to ambush the place, Ho'olhayak intercept them. The soldiers on the ground are ambushed by unmanned power armors, The Mainlander's drones are also disabled thanks to the internal code she got while working with them. And the aircraft that carries Silence got caught into Ho'olhayak Art's trap, and the aircraft crashes. But plot armor kicks in, and the whole passenger survive. Ho'olhayak then confronts the military directly and openly declares she's on Kristen's side. She begins to fight the army freaking alone, subdues some of the soldiers, and almost kills Blake. But Saria comes in and saves the day. However, Ho'olhayak manages to distract her, and then the Snake Lady escapes. Shifting back to the doctor's group. After sharing some conversation with Nasty, Mumu learned about Loken's safe house and led the two there, not far from where the army is currently fighting. Without a doubt, they're hitting a jackpot, and they must hurry. Suddenly, the door to the building opened, and they went inside. This maze-like building is filled with tech and science equipment. Then shortly, Rosmontis got separated from the two. Loken appears, and turns out it was he who separated them and the one who let them in. Now that they are alone, Loken confesses his guilt and sin to Rosmontis, and details the aftermath of his life after the experiments he did on her. But the old man only seems to regret the failure of his experiment. Unable to turn her into a perfect being, a powerful, non-infected arts user. Now that he doesn't have much time to live, and Kristen's plan is almost finished, he wants Rosmontis to acknowledge his sin and kill him with her own hands. Rosmontis slowly regained her memories of Loken's experiment. Fueled by vengeance, her power gets uncontrollable. But by now, the army has entered the facility, and some of them get to Rosmontis' position. Seeing them as a threat, she took her attention to those soldiers and went berserk. On the doctor's side, they also encountered a few soldiers. But luckily, one of them is Ifrit, and she takes down the soldiers alone. They then realize that Rosmontis has lost control. Ifrit then goes to try to calm her down. She reaches Rosmontis and tells her that none of the bad guys who experimented on them can control them, and tells her to remember the good memories Rosmontis has with the others. Hearing what Ifrit said, Rosmontis calms down and eventually regains control of her power. Back to the doctor and Mulsees. After more exploring, they believe they are now entering the main part of the hammer, and Kristen should be nearby. Then, shockingly, they found a sarcophagus-like facility, and nearby is a replica of Mulsees' vivarium. This vivarium is proof that Kristen has never forgotten about the promise she made to Mumu. Upon this revelation, Mulsees chooses to embark on this journey together with Kristen. Then she bitterly pushes the doctor away to the hallway before closing the door. Kaltzit then appears out of nowhere. With Monster's help, she takes the doctor away before this place engulfed in flame. We then see Ho'olhayak and Kristen. Now that Kristen's preparation is finished and the hammer is ready to take flight, Ho'olhayak received what she was promised for doing all of this: the entirety of Loken's research data and unknown coordinates that could lead to where Kristen gets all of her knowledge and power source to do this epic adventure, which Snake Lady believes will help her main goal of bringing back the true form of her race. But before Ho'olhayak leaves, Kristen mentions whether it was worth it to sacrifice her entire life and knowledge just to seek the past. Snake Lady doesn't answer, but feels troubled upon hearing that. Moving on, the military is now converging on Kristen's location. Silence also headed there and stumbled upon Saria and Ifrit, but they are just a little too late. This current moment, November 21st, 1099, 7 p.m. Kristen started her grand plan, launching the hammer into the sky and brightened the whole city by its combustion. The hammer will be flying toward the shaft. It will continue to ascend to 5,000 meters and then absorb the energy from the shaft before it can fire it to the target. Earlier, the shaft was still under military control, but recently the facility keeps on gathering energy on its own. And the people there now somehow don't have any control over the facility, and it still keeps on charging even after some instruments are destroyed. So now the military is planning to take the hammer down mid-air, officially initiated the first aerial campaign in Terra's history, but most of their drones and aircraft can't reach that height. It is even said they are using other drones just to use it as a springboard to ascend higher. But due to the hammer-thick armor, destroying it from the outside is still quite impossible, so the military needs to board the hammer and take it down from within. Switching to the Doctor and Cal. Cal has found Kristen's energy source, and it's around 3,000 meters below them. Cal is worried what Kristen will do will bring more harm than good, so they must get there quickly. As for Saria, she's looking for an aircraft that can get her inside the hammer. Ferdinand appears, tells about a special aircraft that can carry her there, and requests to come with her. After some talk about Ferdinand's motive to protect Rhine, his disdain toward Kristen, and gathers data from the hammer. Saria agreed, and she will pilot the aircraft. After pulling some A-team shenanigans to avoid getting shot by military aircraft, Saria and Ferdinand managed to dock the aircraft to the hammer. They're now 5,000 meters above the ground. Only 1,000 more before they reach the star pod, and the shaft is directly below. So they must hurry to get Kristen and stop this before the military arrive and make things complicated. Meanwhile, Silence went to the shaft hoping to find a clue to stop Kristen. Thanks to the chaos in this place, she entered the facility without trouble. Suddenly, Silence got a strong transmitter signal to some hidden area below, but she's interrupted by Jara, who has decided to not let anyone interfere with Kristen's plan. She assures Silence what Kristen will do won't hurt anyone. But Silence replies that what Kristen do will make her end up being a paragon for other ambitious scientists. That could lead to a more dangerous and inhumane experience in the future. And clearly, if Kristen proceeds with her plan, she most likely won't ever return. And ask if that is what Jara wanted. Jara says she knew that, but still chose to protect Kristen's ultimate goal and her parents' legacy. Unable to reach compromise, the two begin to fight. Shifting to the Doctor and Cal, they are nearing whatever energy source Kristen is using, and Cal told the Doctor to be prepared for what lies ahead. Unfortunately, Ho'olhayak is also here. It seems this is the place from the coordinate that Kristen gave to her. Ho'olhayak quickly holds the Doctor with her tail, but for an unknown reason, Kaltsit is unable to summon Monster here. Luckily, the Tin Man has returned from his so-called death and has been following the two, and he got the order from the all-knowing President of Columbia himself to assist Rhodes Island to their destination no matter what. So he fight and beat Ho'olhayak, while the two went deeper into the cave. They eventually reach their destination, a place later called the Hall of Stasis, filled with hundreds and thousands of sarcophagus. And this is where Kristen gets all of the energy for her plan. Suddenly, their presence has woken the Preserver, an AI that protects this bunker. From their conversation with the Preserver, so many things are revealed. The Preserver first talks with an unknown language, but somehow the Doctor understands what he says. The Preserver also knew Kaltsit origin and mission as guide or protector of Terra, and often called her by her code name Ama 10. We later learned that the Preserver was once a human by the name of Trevor Friston. He, along with all the people buried underneath this place, was once a part of the so-called ancient or first civilization. It is implied they are not native to Terra and not having any animal traits. And shockingly, the Preserver says they are the Doctor's kin. Alas, the Doctor hardly remembers anything because of amnesia. From what the Preserver said, it seems there was once a calamity that hit the people of the first civilization around 13,000 years ago. That led to them initiating the Preserver Project to create this many sarcophagi life-supporting devices, to preserve the people until the calamity passes. However, the calamity came sooner and more overwhelming, and the people end up not fully prepared, so they need someone to make a sacrifice to upload their consciousness and become the overseer of this place. And that person is Trevor Friston. But years after years of protecting this place and futilely trying to reach out to any survivor for help, he learned that the heartbeat of the people is getting weaker. Eventually, the preserver realized even if the people woke up, there's not enough energy for their recovery plan. And those life support devices have pretty much become a coffin. And just so happens that around the year 1097, with scientific section and Nasty's help, Kristen managed to find this place. Kristen then spent many months of Q&A session with the preserver, but instead of being wavered after learning so many truths about this world, she's still determined with her goal to tear the star pod and go beyond the barrier, hoping what she did will become a signal to herald a new age. So after seeing that there's no way to save his people and admiring Kristen's ambition, the preserver chooses to give all of the remaining energy of the Hall of Stasis to Kristen's plan, and says it's too late to stop Kristen. Suddenly there's a big tremor in this place. The shaft has gathered enough energy and is ready to fire toward the hammer. At Silence's side, Jara proved to be a strong foe, but as soon as the shaft is about to fire its energy, Silence tells Jara to flee with other scientists and soldiers, while she headed to where the transmitter signal came from. It's a secret laboratory where the hub is located, and Parvi is here. Parvi has been using the transmitter hub to solve the energy accuracy problem, and he also used these transmitters to perfect his experiment. After studying Sarkaz's witchcraft related to the Revenants, he said he got a clue to expand his chimerism experiment to a soul level, and he wanted to create some kind of artificial consciousness by utilizing the transmitter, that he wishes it could help his current condition. As it turns out, the old man has shown an early sign of dementia, but Silence finds what her mentor does is too risky and she needs to stop Kristen. So she destroys the hub. But Parvis also uses a special transmitter liquid he got and turns himself into a replacement for the hub, which eventually killed him. And now, there seems no way to stop the hammer from the ground. Silence then falls into despair. But fortunately, Ifrit got here after she had followed Silence. Lord Ifrit encourages her, saying that she is strong and there are her friends who are willing to share her burden. After that motivation, Silence steals herself, and both go out of the facility. Shortly, the shaft fires its energy towards the hammer, and now the hammer is preparing to fire all of that energy to tear open the star pod. Inside that flying ring, Ferdinand is astonished at how this place can withstand and store this much energy. But he conjectures that once the hammer fires this energy, a big chunk of the facility will be destroyed or disengaged from the main body. Ferdy is mad that Kristen is being so selfish. All of the research towards the Horizon Arc could transform Terra's academic landscape. Yet she chose to take all of this to her grave. So Ferdinand chose to document the data of this project, and also stalling the military while Saria confronts her former bestie. It's not an easy path to get to Kristen because of the weightless environment. Not to mention Kristen has prepared some obstacles and people to stop anyone from interfering. But Saria eventually gets to the vivarium and meets Mulcis. Mulcis tells her they are now in Galleria Stellaria, an aircraft that will fly to outer space, which consists of this vivarium and a few other main facilities. Mulcis then fights Saria to prevent her from stopping Kristen. The elf manages to pin her down with her ability, but suddenly there's a gravitational shift, and Mulcis gets tossed out of the room. Then the door closes, but Mulcis is unable to open the door as her clearance has been revoked. It seems Kristen is the one who did all of this, while Kristen built the vivarium as a promise to Mumu. But she never wanted Mumu to come with her on a journey that can't guarantee their survival. Then Saria went into the deepest part of this place, the planetarium, where she finally confronted Kristen. Saria persuades Kristen to give up this suicide journey of her, saying that they barely knew anything about the star pod, least what's beyond it, and quoting that, "A pioneer like her should be clearing the way for all humanity, not jumping headfirst into the abyss, never to return. But Kristen is determined with her goal and explains she sees herself as a starting point for what the future holds. And there might be a day when a more complete team can explore outer space. Since talking won't do, Saria begins to fight Kristen to forcefully save her friend. This exact moment is the most crucial moment for both ladies. But in the end, despite Kristen's gizmos, Saria manages to win. And now she's looking at how to stop and descend this damned flying thing. However, the ionization response has made all of the instruments useless. Seeing it's futile to stop the hammer and the closest escape pods have already gone. As a last-ditch effort, Saria suggests she and Kristen freefall into the ground. With her calcification arts, they might have a chance to survive. But just then, Kristen tricks her and opens the platform right beneath Saria. And now Saria falls to the ground at such a high speed, she began to lose consciousness. While Kristen is left alone in the planetarium, wishing that one day her good friend and the people of Terra will also see the world as what she sees right now. Shortly, the hammer began firing its energy toward the barrier, resulting in a shockwave scattered across the sky, forming a spectacular phenomenon to every Terran that gazed above. Some are in awe, and some others are worried. Even more interesting are the sea monsters in Iberia that are driven by their instinct to look toward the sky. The truth of the sky has finally been revealed, along with a starry night filled with observable stars, and one of the twin moons of Terra. Now it appears more like an artificial satellite that seemingly observes lives below. Meanwhile, all facilities have disengaged from Galleria's main body, which has already broken through the star pod, and everyone except Kristen is now preparing to escape using the escape pod. A security spots a distraught Mumu and tells her to get inside. He also gives her a remote sensor recorder from Kristen that provides real-time data from the vivarium, which is now flying towards outer space inside the Galleria. She is shocked to see that 90% of her plants have already died upon breaking through the star pod, and the rest are expected to suffer the same fate. Just then, another personnel reported a failure of the pod parachute, and they spotted Saria outside, falling to the ground and still unconscious, with her calcification barely condensing. As everything seems about to end, Muelces uses her power to create a vast body of water to cushion the escape pod, and Saria falls. But this attempt seems to endanger her life. Nevertheless, Saria and the people inside the pod manage to survive thanks to Mumu. After some time, Silence and Ifrit, along with other SR teams, came to the crash site. Silence found Saria and then tended her wounds. Both then gaze at the sky and are awed at this phenomenon. But they also briefly discuss a way to prevent any mishaps after this event. On the other side, the others have also survived, but Muelces is nowhere to be found. Switching back to Doctor and Cal. Through the Columbia network, the Preserver learned about various problems in Terra's current society, and its people tendency to walk towards destruction, such as waging war against each other. The Preserver questions Calcit and the Doctor about the firmness of their goal to solve various threats and problems in this land, especially the Doctor, since there's a chance the Doctor will waver once they regain their memory. The Preserver then starts some kind of simulation called debate to determine if they're firm with their goal and intention and learn more about the current Cal and Doctor. The Doctor is taken to experience their past, where the Doctor meets multiple important individuals they have met in their life, including the mysterious priestess. Same goes for Calcit, who is recalling her mission to protect Terra and its people from chaos. And in one instance, she's taken into a place with a mysterious giant skeleton. Shortly, the simulation is over, The Preserver is now confident that the Doctor and Cal have what it takes to solve the problems and threats in Terra. They then continue to talk about various things such as the people of Aegir, once again mentioning the Sarkaz are native or endemic life forms in Terra, and mentions about a door or perhaps some kind of portal hidden beyond further north of the infinite ice field. The Preserver also mentioned that the star pod would heal itself, although it's not clear how long it will take. Now that Kristen has achieved her goal, the Preserver has a last request. He wants to escape this torment, shut down his system, and inevitably destroy this place. And ask Cal, as the only one who can operate this first civilization tech, to do it, and also erase his millennia-old memories, only keeping his emotions and original memories intact, saying he wanted to die as Trevor Friston, even if it's only a replica. While Cal is working on it, the Preserver let the Doctor ask more things they wanted to know, and the Doc asks him about what is Originium and who is Priestess. But the Preserver only answers what he knows, and it's all still pretty vague. He says that Kaltsit also has the answers, but apparently Priestess has carved in some sort of order to Cal's consciousness. That won't allow her to answer those two questions directly, and there's also the reason that knowing the answers might hinder Doc's current development. Nevertheless, the Preserver tells what he knows. He basically says that Originium was meant as a way to benefit humanity, but also mentioned its potential for their destruction. It's not clear if Originium is purely man-made or is an outer space substance, but he says that Priestess was the starting point of this madness. And not so surprisingly, he says the Doctor was once extremely close to her. The Doctor then asks if oripathy can be cured. The Preserver says in Terra's current state, the so-called curing it is difficult, but there might be other ways they can stop or use it. And then just before his memories are deleted, the Preserver wished the Doctor good luck in finding an answer to the truth in the future. Shortly, the Preserver and the facility is about to shut down, and this place will pretty much be destroyed. Then Tin Man comes in and leads them to a passage that should lead them to the shaft. But after they leave, Ho-Ol-Hayak, who has escaped from Tin Man's trap, enters the place, and realizes that the Preserver is the one who has told Kristen everything. She is in awe and talks to the Preserver like she's talking to a deity. She wanted to know the truth that her people seek, and ask if the Preserver can bestow her the true form of her race. But by now, the Preserver can no longer hold a proper conversation. However, the Preserver gives her some kind of weird visions, like a vision of a father and a daughter that could be Friston and his child, and a vision that is probably the planet Terra. Then, realizing the Preserver is about to shut down, by using her arts, she somehow manages to store the Preserver's remaining consciousness in her staff. She then followed the trio and used what's left of the Preserver as a bargaining chip. Giving it to Maylander is a big no, so she gives it to Rhodes Island in exchange for shelter and information about what she's looking for, as she believes Cal and the Doctor know more about it. And shortly, Tin Man got an order to let Rhodes Island have it. As Tin Man leave, and Ho-Ol-Hayak looks for another exit, the Doctor and Cal are then contacted by Mark Max, the president of Columbia himself. He's that being who perched on Conrad's shoulder all this time. A hyper-rational super AI who has been the president of Columbia ever since their independence. Turns out the president has supervised them from the beginning. In fact, it is said he can stop Kristen if he wanted to. He also says Friston is his father, which could imply Max was made by him. And the president says that he and the PRTS have the same root. Anyway, he let Rhodes Island have what remained of Friston and demanded them to restore him. Then, before finishing the conversation, he declares he will make Columbia become the sword and shield of Terra in this dying era, which makes Cal a bit mad and says Friston never wanted a tyrant. Could imply that the president wanted Columbia to have a significant influence in the world, even if that means through expansionism. They then reach the surface, and they can see the hammer crash site nearby. It's time to regroup with everyone. But the doctor notices strange bubbles near the hammer crash site. Feeling it's related to Mumu and she is in trouble. The doctor then goes to save the damsel in distress. Switching to Rosmontis, she meets Loken for the last time. It seems the old man is already at death's doorstep. He still hopes Rosmontis will be the one to put an end to his miserable life and fulfill her vengeance. But most importantly, he hopes that he can live within her mind. But Rosmontis refuses to get her hands dirty. And as the old man passes away, Rosmontis declared that she would erase and forever forget Loken from her memories. Back to the doctor at Mumu's vivarium. The place is flooded from Milsey's power, and Mumu is inside that body of water. As the doctor reaches her, Mumu expresses her sorrow and loneliness after everything that happened. She mentioned an elf tribe living deep inside Sammy's forest. They and Mumu are clearly alike, but there's just something that makes her unable to fit into their society. But she thought at least she had her dream with Kristen she could hold on to. But even Kristen now abandoned her. And there's a disarray among Rhinelab founding members. It's just one disaster after another. And now she feels a great sorrow and trying to end her own life by dehydrating herself and merging with this body of water. But the doctor stubbornly reaches out to Mumu and encourages her to keep on living, telling a little bit about the meeting with Friston and how the doctor has possibly lost all of their kin. But the doctor still chooses to keep on moving forward and says that being alone is also a type of strength. And eventually, the doctor manages to save her. Time skip 2 weeks later. We see Blake and Ferdinand incarcerated in Max DC prison. Sounds like they, or at least the colonel, are expecting a death sentence. But Ferdinand doesn't even care. He's currently working on documenting all the data he found during the flight. With his theories, he says what he will do will have a significant impact on Colombian academia. So even if he dies, people will remember his great achievement. But it looks like Ferdy won't die anytime soon, because Justin has come to the prison to bail him. Later on, we know that Rhinelab has been reorganized. Saria succeeded Kristen's position as Rhinelab Control. Ferdinand is pardoned and has retained his position as the Director of Energy Section. Jara has retired, and her position has also been replaced. The same goes for the Defense and Structural Section, which now have a new director. It goes without saying, after what Kristen did, the scientific community in Colombia and probably other countries are being busy to learn about the recent event and possibly gain benefit from it. So to prevent any future mishap and maintain the presence of ethics in Colombia scientific research, Silence, with the help from the government and Maylander, becomes the sponsor of Trimount's Ethics in Scientific Research Joint Declaration, as well as becoming Saria's executive advisor. And they have invited some Rhine directors and other top tech companies' representatives for a meeting. Now for the last part of the story. The Galleria has been flying aimlessly in outer space for 5 days. This ship was never prepared for interstellar travel and has begun shutting down due to a lack of energy source. Kristen knew it was going to be a one-way ticket to space. Nevertheless, she is satisfied with the conclusion of her work and the realization of her dream. Kristen then heads to the hibernation pod she had prepared. It's the survival plan mentioned earlier, where Loken managed to reverse engineer the sarcophagus and create this hibernation pod. Kristen will undergo a cryogenic sleep, and God knows how long she can survive. Before entering, she records an audio log, where she described this magnificent universe, and wished for future generations to follow in her footsteps and also see this view. She then mentioned the only 2 times where she ever truly felt alive. One was when she brought Saria to her hometown, and the second time is now. With that, she bid her farewell to Terra and to the universe. Then we are shown a flashback scene when Kristen asks numerous questions to Friston. Among them is the question of whether the other stars are just like Terra, to which Friston replies that Terra is rather small compared to them, and mentioned a star 10 million times larger than Terra called star number 4. But Friston says that star would completely disappear into the gigantic black hole of the Zobaid Nebula. He also mentions satellite arrays outside of Talos can manipulate the geography of a planet like Terra. Then, interestingly, Kristen asks why the Sanctus have halos and wings, unlike the Sarkaz they supposedly originated from. And Friston tells Kristen vaguely that an icy chain of command from a machine gives them that new identity. Then Friston asks a question to Kristen, whether she will gamble her life after knowing all of what Friston had told her. Terra is still ill-prepared for this big leap, and her death could be without meaning or reason. To which Kristen answered with another question. What do all of the people's struggles and achievements inevitably mean? And what is it that life ultimately seeks? And that is the future, the one inevitable meaning that life ultimately seeks. Well, fellas, that's all the story of Lone Trail. Here's to Kristen and a new age upon us. That should be all. Adios.